Lowell, you have a new book out now, and of course you have a whole series of books. I'd like you to kind of give the title and kind of like the major issue behind this book. It's part one, Baltimore's Rise and Fall. But let's talk about the title of the book and what it all means in terms of what's going on with the political dance that's happening right now in the GOP and the Democratic Party and the future of America.
Well, the subtitle of the book is American Dream versus Progressive Dream. In this book, in an earlier book called The Great Withdrawal, we showed how progressivism destroyed Detroit. In this book, we show how progressivism turned Baltimore into one of the most beautiful and successful cities in America, into the heroin capital of the United States, and an economic mess where they had all that rioting just about a year ago. Where in fact the rioting was so surreal in Baltimore that the mayor said to reporters, "We also gave those who wish to destroy space to do that as well, and we work very hard to keep that balance." So basically, she just told the police to retreat, let the mobs loot any store they wanted. She even at one point turned the police authority of the city over to the gangs, the Crips, the Bloods, the Black Guerrilla family, and said to them, "Help us protect black stores." And as the New York Times reported, they did. For example, at one store owned by black people, when looters came, the gang leaders said, "No, do not loot this store. But by the way, down there, that is a Chinese American-owned store, and that one over there is an Arab American-owned store. Go loot them instead." Wow. That was the police protection the people of Detroit got, or pardon me, Baltimore got. Baltimore is an amazing city. Once upon a time, early in its history, it was the second preferred destination of people all over the world wanting to come here and find the American dream. Because it was the great technology city. It was the Silicon Valley of its time. It's where the first telegraph was implemented. It's where the first railroad was developed, where the first railroad locomotive in America was created for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. It was a wonderful center of high technology, enterprise, and success. 60 unbroken years of progressive rule have basically destroyed it.
Tell us what progressive means, because we have the firestorm of Bernie Sanders, who is the most advanced in the progressive movement right now in the Democratic Party, and then, of course, the corrupt progressive Hillary Clinton. And people need to understand, we've already had progressives in power. For example, we've had the sneaky progressiveness of Bill Clinton. We've had also within the Republican Party a kind of a grudging PNAC kind of version of progressivism, and even in the Republican Party where they're trying to destroy the populist Donald Trump because he's coming against their system, which in some ways can, as the director of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, says, we can work with Hillary Clinton, which I find extremely disturbing to hear that from someone who says they're going to, derail Trump's candidacy, even though he could bring America back because it's a big business and he can run big businesses. He has 5,000 of them himself. Why do we have this happening? It's because progressivism basically is socialist communism, which basically, and I like this term from Cuba, the government will pretend to pay me and I'll pretend to work. This is like translated from Hispanic, the Cuban dream of why the country is such a mess in Cuba.
Oh, sure. In fact, I've been in Cuba as a journalist. I was down there a few years ago to do a story for the LA Times. And it is not a pleasant place. What surprises me is how many progressives are reluctant to admit that Cuba is, A, racist. When I was down there meeting with people in power, I didn't find one person in any position of real power in Cuba who was black. They were all white.
Right.
And that's part of the history, vision of Cuba that makes it a very different place. Most Latin American countries have native population. Into, for example, 85% of Mexicans, part of their ancestry is Native American or Indian. In Cuba, Native American blood is zero.
And then, your microphone may be cutting in and out a little bit because I hear it chopping a bit.
Okay, well, I'll
maybe just turn the volume down. I think it's chopping because it's a little high in the energy.
I just get excited by these topics.
Yeah, I know. Now, what I see happening, and this is the current what I call dynamic. I see Mr. Cruz trying to even rearrange candidate numbers so he actually gets more candidates from Louisiana, though he didn't win the state. And Cruz apparently has got a lot of skeletons. I mean, his super PAC tries to pretend they bought the actual rights to the video, to the pictures for Melania Trump, and then posted them up and tried to pretend they didn't know about them. Of course they do about them. And the super PAC were trying to start a fight. This kind of in-the-muck fight doesn't need to happen. It makes the Republican Party look like a bunch of fools. I'm sure Trump doesn't want to be down dirty. He's a counterpuncher. But in this kind of milieu, we have somebody like Cruz who is so conniving and evil that he'll do almost anything to get the candidacy. And so he's not really a conservative. I mean, you have to understand, I got a document from John Spring, who's a very good author, that that Cruz's wife is not just a minor person. She's like, Cruz is very intelligent, by the way, and so is his wife. Even though she's not a good looker, but she's really smart. And she is evil as the day is long. I mean, she right up there with Hillary Clinton. She wrote a lot of the PNAC documents, the North American Union and the corridor patterns and everything in terms of world trade. She's one of the primary authors. She's a member of CFR. She's on loan from Goldman Sachs. When they say that, that Trump is saying he's going to punch back, it's like, it's not talking about a modeling picture of his wife kind of, basically naked under the water. It's, this woman is very dangerous, Cruz's wife. And it shows you where Cruz comes by. He gets tons of money from the bankers and the other people, although he says he's a conservative. He's not. He's in the back pocket of a lot of interests that are basically trying to pretend he's not. And, the only candidate I can see that's actually out there that actually is non-progressive, wants to do something, is Trump. And that's why they have all these riots at his conventions. In fact, there now is a move to have 35,000 members applying right now before they go to Cleveland, which is another example of Baltimore, to have concealed carry weapons so that in case in Cleveland they start shooting, like with terrorism, or start trying to cause real riots because George Soros's Black Lives Matter and his other terror groups are going to try to do some real serious violence, and of course they want to blame it on Trump when Trump isn't trying to incite it. I mean, the 72-year-old guy that punched the we call Colcock, the black guy that stuck his hand in his face. If somebody stuck their hand in my face with a middle finger and spat at me, I'd probably, Colcock him too. I don't see why they make a big deal of some old guy popping somebody because he actually spits at him and curses at him with a middle finger right in his face. To me, it's weird. It's like these people commit a federal crime, which, by the way, disrupting a convention is a federal crime. It's okay to protest outside quietly, but not to come into the chamber and actually disrupt it by cursing and swearing and trying to jump on the stage and grab the microphone like that guy that tried to grab Trump and actually had a knife in him. He actually knifed one of the private security guards around Trump a week or so ago. I find this whole play by the media is so disgusting. Anybody that reads newspapers from all these media pundits or looks at the regular six-headed monster of the media now needs to stop doing it. And most young people, by the way, we call them millennials, they don't get news from Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. They don't pollute their brain with that garbage anymore. They go to programs like this. They read books like yours, Craig Smith, and this book. They try to find out what the heck's going on because they don't want to participate in another illegal or stupid war for the globalist bankers or oil industry. They don't want to do more garbage to strip jobs from America. They don't want to just think, well, we'll become a service economy. No, when Carrier and even Nabisco moves to Mexico and elsewhere, you need to be able to build stuff in America. That's what made America great during the Second World War, and that's what crushed Nazi Germany, was the fact we could manufacture bombs and weapons and ship them into the battlefield. That's why they lost.
Yeah, and yet what we have right now in America, Bill, is we have about as many people on Social Security disability, just the disability program, as we do employed full-time in all of manufacturing in this country. It's about 11% each. So our economy is very close to a basket case economy.
Exactly.
The
song is from Steely Dan, and it's called The Last Mall. If you want to hear the whole song, it's pretty funny. It talks about the last call to the last mall, and I think you may have heard it before, right?
I may have. I love Steely Dan stuff.
Yeah. I like the lyrics because he tells a story that makes you think about the whole environment around it. And that particular song talks about the last call to the last mall, and you get on the ramp and see the orange-red sky because it's it's the last day of known regular secular history, and you get all your stuff because you want to get treats for the little ones and things for the little buckaroos because
you get those fabulous last bargains.
Exactly, because it's the last call to the last mall. Now, people don't understand. When we're talking now in the end of March 2016, it's almost the last call to the last mall. Now, I'll just lay out some very scary things that people may or may not know. I get all the financial newsletters, and because I am retired now, I do consults and write and research. And I'm not dragged down by being in a practice working in the intensive care unit or assisting in surgery or other thing. But I actually know a lot more than I ever did in practice. I mean, probably since I retired, I know 10 times more than I did then, or maybe a lot more than that. But what I do is I spend all my time studying geopolitical, religious, other things, and reading. I'm like a reading maniac. And what I realized is that most of the stuff I was taught, whether it's in church, in university, or in the public media, is all crap. I call it the all crap rule. Everything is, by the way, trying to manipulate and control and tell you lies. So, like that song, Sweet Little Lies from, tell me lies, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Well, they aren't sweet little. They're big damn lies. And unfortunately, most of the people really aren't functionally stupid. They've been disinformed on purpose. I think Mark Twain made the comment, those who read the newspaper are misinformed and those who don't read are uninformed. You remember that quote?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought,
Twain was splendid. Of course, what we're now seeing at this moment in history, among other things, as you were suggesting, American politics used to be the stupid party against the evil party.
Right.
Now those two parties have merged together sufficiently that they're both stupid and evil.
Right, and here's the problem. People don't grasp this because it's not only a psychological, but it's a spiritual corruption of the collective body politic and the collective consciousness of not only Americans but of people worldwide. That's why we have terrorism in Lahore. They kill 70 Christians with these crazy Muslims, and we're only talking about a tiny minority, as I said before. Our problem, and this is one of the very few times I agree with Obama, but then I totally disagree. They don't want to use the term Muslim. Islam, by its very nature, is a corrupt religious system because 86% of it, according to Walid Shabat, is a political system that controls everything from your dietary habits to how you marry and how you child abuse and sexual, female sexual mutilation to God knows what. So people need to start grasping that in many ways the corrupt and evil Catholic Church, in the 14th century is very much like what Islam is today. And a lot of these people have been, quote, coming out of it. But Wahhabism was invented, believe it or not, in 1924 in Londonistan. Do you know where that capital of Londonistan is? It's in London. The British made the alliance with the Lawrence of Arabia to make the Saud family the kings of this whole territory. And Wahhabism, people have to understand this is a relatively recent creation. I mean, Bashar al-Assad says the real problem, and he's a Shiite, is Wahhabism. It's extreme Islam that believes you have to dominate the world. My family lived in Lebanon, on my mother's side, for thousands of years in the Shuf Mountains around Beirut. They were the Cohens that came down to serve in the temple, right through even from down to the 5th century after the return from Babylon. And they served in the temple right to the time of not only after Jesus, when the temple was torn down by Titus. What people should start to grasp is the real problem is much more a controlled chaos by a bunch of global evil bastards that want to make certain that they maintain enough chaos that they can get absolute control and have us hand over the last of our little few rights we still have left over to their control, whether it's cashless society or fractional reserve money they can mess around with and wipe out credit. If you look at the parameters of money, these are, and I didn't take an economics course. I taught myself, but I read a lot. And to me, the most important parameters of money are the velocity of credit and the velocity of money. And if you choke off the velocity of credit, it's almost like taking your thumbs in someone's carotid arteries, like one of these Brazilian mixed martial arts things, and you do a naked, reverse carotid compression thing so somebody passes out and starts seizuring on the fight floor. Well, that's what they're doing to the economy. And they're doing it while they're sucking all that money out. Now they can't even make money on the derivatives market. And people wonder why this year it's very likely we're going to have a world correction and maybe a kind of a full-forced cardiac arrest to the economy. We're close.
John Maynard Keynes said if you put in economic stimulus to overcome the business cycle, to undo a bad economy and get it back up to level, that would increase the velocity of money. But in fact, money is now at its lowest velocity in more than 50 years.
Right.
And they've just dumped in $8 trillion. If that won't do it, if that won't get growth up, the latest analysis of the economy, and this is out just this week,
right.
The economy GDP is now growing at 0.6%, and they're lying to make it that high. Because we're now in the magic world of not just zero interest rates, but negative interest rates, meaning we've gone below zero.
Right. So what? Now let's get back to the book, okay? People don't realize the Baltimoreization and the Detroitization of America will happen if either Hillary or Bernie Sanders gets in. Now, Bernie may say all these platitudes. I want, free education. And I had relatively inexpensive education when I trained in Canada in medicine. And I trained further in the States here in Georgia, University of Medical Wisconsin, and the University of Colorado. But what I see happening is that doctors are never going to be able to pay off their debt if they owe $500,000. They're never. Doesn't matter if they're family doctor or specialist. They're going to be literally sucked into working for a hospital corporation, which will force them to practice a certain way. And if they don't, they'll lose their jobs. They can be blackballed, so they lose their medical career completely if they don't behave with the state medical board or the hospital corporations tell them how to practice, even if it harms patients. So they're literally inducted into an army of in debt up to their eyeballs, and they wonder why the healthcare system is going down the tubes and people are dying quicker and drugs are not withdrawn from the marketplace and everything. I've talked about it in the previous segments last hour. So when we look at the Baltimoreization, why did progressivism destroy Baltimore? What were the key factors that destroyed it in the same way that these maniacs destroyed the culture and the family structure in Detroit? I mean, Detroit is a wasteland. I mean, now literally they're rewilding it. As they say, the Chinese want to buy it, but if they don't, the buffalo are soon going to roam there again, literally.
Oh, literally, and they've had wild packs of dogs and virtual wolves roaming there, too. Property values plummeted to like $1 a house in some neighborhoods.
Right.
Because it was simply unviable for human beings to live there. There were no street lights, no electricity, no running water, no lights at night to light up the streets. I mean, you were back in pioneer days, only with heavily armed roving gangs around you. Now, that's Detroit. But what happened in Baltimore, of course, is you get people hooked on welfare. They become addicts. They slid from there to being heroin addicts. Right. 1 out of 10 people in Baltimore today is a heroin addict. They've been under progressive rule for 60 years. And to understand what that means, Nancy Pelosi's father was the mayor of Baltimore. Nancy Pelosi, at age 7, he would put her on the phone when somebody called asking for favors. And she, at age 7, had been trained to say,
cost a quarter what it does now, everybody's covered. So, Lowell, so why did progressives believe these things, which, socialism never worked. In fact, when Gorbachev came here to the Presidio after the fall of the Soviet Union, he was an intelligent man. And people think, well, he's just a globalist. Well, he was a globalist, but see, these globalists are, again, another diluted thing that central control is going to make things better. We've discovered this with Common Core with education. It doesn't make it better. Decentralizing, for example, licensure. Coming it back to non-government certifying agencies that can say you're now at a certain level where you can be a neurosurgeon. And I believe in lateral training. In other words, you can start off as a firefighter, and if you train enough and certify enough, you can become a neurosurgeon or orthopedic surgeon. It's your business if you want to take the courses and put in the money and the time and work your butt off to do it. Rather than going through the typical linear pathway of, I got a bachelor's degree in chemistry, I went to this medical school, I did this residency, etc. Those pathways you can still have open, but you need to have lateral ways of getting into those pathways. And that's why somebody can start off as a nurse and become a nurse practitioner and become a general family doctor and then become a specialist in a specific area, like pediatrics or whatever. It's their business. Also, you should be portable. If you're licensed quote, in America, which includes Guam, you should be able to retire in Florida. It's nobody's business to tell you have to recertify all over again after 50 years in practice. It's stupid.
Now, in the British Commonwealth, if you're a doctor in the Bahamas, say, and you just move somewhere else in the Commonwealth like Canada and immediately be acknowledged as a doctor?
Right. That's what should happen. And if we had cooperation with the British Commonwealth with American certification, we wouldn't have a dearth of doctors. We'd also have a system where, besides the 7 points that Trump has put together for his basic plan to transition us, because we need to move to not just a, quote, single-payer system. We need to move to a single payer that moves away from malpractice, moves away from fee-for-service, moves away from state licensure control. Because, by the way, all these state licensure agencies are corrupt as hell. They're trying to stop cooperation with other specialists or doctors or other health professionals. They're trying to stop innovation. They don't want doctors. Like, for example, we've legally supported Dr. Brzezinski developing his gene-based cancer treatments, and I've actually financially supported him as well through our Association of Physicians and Surgeons. I'm disgusted by the fact that the medical profession doesn't want to move forward and evolve into a system that was known 3,000 years ago in ancient Israel, that you shouldn't have health insurance. It's a right. Bernie Sanders gets it, but guess what? I go way beyond all the so-called socialists. I believe that everyone should have health care. I believe everybody should be able to get an education. If they have the smarts, they should be able to get an education at a reasonable cost.
And by the way, you also believe that prevention is a major factor here. It's better to prevent a disease than treat it once it's here.
Right, but do you know how many doctors out of, say, 1,000 knows any functional preventive medicine? Virtually none. And if I talk to doctors...
Our system is designed to treat disease. It's not designed to maintain health.
Well, I remember one doctor at a conference basically in Phoenix, Arizona here, about 12 years ago. He said, Dr. Deagle, I used to think you were just nuts. Now I realize you actually know your stuff. And he says, please don't tell me anymore. I can't deal with the guilt because I'll lose my license to practice if I do what you tell me to do, even if it gets better outcomes. The fact is, we have a system where the, quote, the medical profession eats its own. It doesn't want people to discover things, just like I've said in the show. When I started working with doctors from UCLA back in 1981 with Dr. Chung and Vujadani at the immunology department, Dr. Vujadani now has the top immunology lab in the world in Los Angeles for immunotoxicology. And we were doing tests on trimellitic anhydride from diesel fuel, formaldehyde, and toluene isocyanate, because I saw a lot of out-of-body workers without separate air systems getting brain damage and dementia, adenomatous polyps, pancreatic cancer, etc. And so I started doing toxicology research with them, and I got threatened by the Alberta College of Physicians and Surgeons. I'm back at it again, because the previous year I was working with the head of pathology on finding the cause of diabetes, which I did with the head of pathology, Dr. Otto Hewen, based on research from Dr. Kraft at the University of Chicago. Their answer was, we're going to pull your damn license for doing stuff we don't like you to do, even if you're making major discoveries, Deagle. Shut the hell up. Well, I say to them, shut the hell up, you guys. I am not going to go away, okay? That's why my show on this network is number 2 in terms of total downloads, because I don't just touch the top millimeter of news, whether it's geopolitical, spiritual, or medical. I go right down like a pathologist to the bone marrow. I don't mess around.
And you and I have discussed before, what if Dr. Bill Deagle discovered a pill and everybody who took that pill would live to be a healthy 140 years of age? Would the government allow you to have that pill? Would Medicare pay for you getting that pill? Not on your life. Because it would bankrupt the system.
Here's the thing. We already are edging toward that. We have, for example, sitting right on my desk, I have tablets from one of the products we make called NADH. And the research right at MIT shows that if you take NADH, it actually stops aging or slows it dramatically. That's only one of many things we have that actually stop or slow aging. So we're getting close. I'm working on a thesis, which I'm writing into a paper to present to our Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, which I'm going to present probably in Las Vegas this winter at the major international conference. And it's going to actually show the pathways to actually create an anti-aging society. We're going to have a telethon probably later this spring or summer to raise the $30 to $50 million we need to build a center, which most likely we will build south of the U.S. border in Ensenada, because you can't do anything like this innovative in America or you'll get persecuted to death. You
No,
can't.
I remember my father was a drug smuggler. When he was quite old and dying of cancer, he would drive down to Mexico and he would buy all those assorted pills you couldn't buy here, thanks to our government.
Right.
And so, yes, he became a drug pusher, or not pusher, but smuggler.
Right. Well, here's the plan. We are going to build a center that will have scientists, technicians, stem cell researchers, hyperbaric therapists, scalar biophysics experts, and so on. And we are going to build a system that will allow you to actually stop senescence or physical aging. We're not talking about just, slowing disease down. We're talking about stopping it. Stopping it and reversing it. Regenerating tissues and organs, taking your heart if you've got congestive heart failure, and reactivating your stem cells to rebuild the heart muscle. Literally building the framework to actually create not just cloned organs or organs out of a pig or another human being, but actually regrowing organs with biophotonic and other technologies, so we can actually, regrow if someone's got an arm blown off in a physical accident, rebuilding an arm that's biologically their arm. That's the technique. We're only 5 to 20 years away from that. We're not far. By 20 years from now, most of this technology will be secondhand, but it's going to be created by people like me and thousands of other doctors. We have 20,000 doctors now in the Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine working toward these goals, and we're going to do it. The fact is, there's going to be a lot of resistance because the medical system is the largest industry on earth. Healthcare in the United States is bigger than the next 5 industries on every continent in the world. Healthcare just in the U.S.
And the potential in nature is so enormous. For example, there's a little tiny jellyfish in the world that, apart from being eaten by other creatures, it never dies. It's literally immortal. Every time it gets to a certain point in its aging cycle, it just kicks back and becomes an adolescent over again.
Yeah, well,
It keeps going through this constant re-youthifying.
I figured out something that I'm working on now. I have the Russian Space Agency bioplasm and clinical and expert devices that they use to monitor their cosmonauts on my desk right now, and I've actually worked out how to pull out the treatment frequencies to reactivate the DNA. Plus, I have biopeptides from the European Anti-Aging Society and from the Academy of Sciences in St. Petersburg with Dr. Kavinson and other anti-aging technologies. So we can create morphogenic fields right now. Right now I can do it. We can actually start reversing aging, and instead of stem cell transplant, we can give you peptides to reactivate your kidneys, or your brain, or your heart. Those are available right now. If people want to consult me, I have them available just the last month now. And what people should realize is we're getting really close. Really close to reversing a lot of the conditions. In fact, many conditions that people say you can't treat through conventional medicine, I can reverse today. Now, will it happen? Will they try to persecute me? If I had a license, they'd probably pull it for actually doing these things. But we're going to do it in such an intelligent way, and of course an aggressive way, with thousands of doctors and a lot of people behind us. It's not going to be suppressible. How's that? But again, the same thing's going on with politics. For God's sake, don't vote Democrat and put more progressives in there. They have all kinds of dreams with no way of paying. All kinds of different topics. Lowell, I got to stop ranting and let you talk about the book and some of these chapters and how they can get the book. What's the story?
It all ties together, Dr. Bill. The reason we write these books, and Craig Smith and I, this is our 6th book in a series of 12 we're doing, a lot of which is dedicated to telling people of the dangers of progressivism that you've been discussing. By the way, anyone who would like the book, it's absolutely free and post-paid. This is our little mission from God, is to try to arm people with information to save the Republic, save the Constitution, and so on. Just call toll-free 800-630-1494. That's 1-800-630-1494, or as I like to say, think of Columbus sailing the ocean blue in 1492, but not quite. It's 1-800-630-1494. So why is our subtitle, "We have seen the future and it looks like Baltimore, American Dream versus Progressive Dream," important? Right. Progressivism emerged around the time of the French Revolution and into the Romantic movement of the early 1800s. And the essence of it was a group of people said, we don't like God, we don't believe in moral judgment on ourselves, we want to be able to do whatever we want. We are going to create a heaven on earth. Not by God making it, but by man making it. We are going to create a new Garden of Eden. And in this Garden of Eden, it will be okay to eat the apple. It won't matter how many snakes there are, and so on. And the essence of that is they do not focus on individuals. In fact, they almost don't believe in individuals at all. They believe in the collective. In other words, you do not exist as an individual, unique creation of God. You mentioned religion during the break. St. Paul once said, "Of course I wish everybody else was like me, but I recognize that every person has his own gift from God."
Right.
Everybody has their own special ability, their own dream, their own... Now that is the old Western tradition that dovetails with the American dream. What progressives believe is, well, I don't give a damn what you are as an individual. What I care is, are you a black or a white? Are you a Christian or an atheist? You know, they create all these polarizations.
Right.
And that they take one side of each polarization in order to pit people against each other by divide and conquer tactics. And you are supposed to be true to your team. If you're a black, you're not supposed to share ideas with whites. You're supposed to have only your own ideas. And in this way, you as an individual become utterly worthless. I was so stunned years ago when Bill Clinton was caught up in the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And Steve Grossman, one of the high Democrat Party officials at the time, was quoted on television. He was being interviewed, and he said, "Bill Clinton is the most moral politician I have ever met." And a stunned reporter said, "Well, how could you say that? What does that mean?" And Grossman explained that individual morality, bourgeois morality, as they would call it, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Bill Clinton can rape 100 women. It doesn't matter. The question is, what is his social morality? His politically correct morality? Is he in favor of socialism, for example, or does he oppose it? If he's in favor of it, he's moral.
Wow.
If he opposes it, he's immoral. And it doesn't matter what as an individual or a bourgeois, individualist culture person he does.
Right.
As a political... And this is the thing. They want there to be a ruling elite, and they want all the rest of us to conform with the orders the ruling elite gives us. And they do not believe that you should have the right to run your own life. You're just part of the collective. You can be sacrificed to the collective.
Right. One of the comments that came out about a year ago, and I want you to comment on this because it's on the same stream of thought, is Obama came out about a year or so ago saying, you didn't build that business, you didn't do this or that. It was the environment that America created. Can you run on that? Because when I hear these comments from Obama, and he sounds like almost like an evangelist to try to preach this progressive idea, you don't count. You don't have creative talents. You didn't build that business. I mean, where does this guy get off saying these things, these obscenities? Well,
how does an anthill work? I mean, the counterpart, and in fact, this is interesting because Woodrow Wilson, one of the first great progressive Democrat presidents of the U.S., who was a racist and had many other horrible human flaws. He was a eugenicist and so on. But he once gave a famous speech in which he said, we progressives have been working inside the outer superstructure of the U.S., the Constitution, which we now regard as obsolete as progressives. And within a decade or two, he said, we're going to kick down the old walls and show the new progressive utopia, perfect society. It will be exactly like a perfect beehive, he said. Think about that. What is a beehive like, and how is it different from our society? In a beehive, individual bees have no rights or privileges at all. Even the queen, in a way, is ruled by the system. But certainly individual bees are just there to work themselves to death in 2 weeks and then be gone.
Right.
So every individual is to, or person, single bee or human, is to serve the collective. This is why you heard under communism, they would talk this way. Under Nazism, everything was serving the Volk. And by the way, progressivism, as it emerged in Europe, metastasized into many different forms. Progressivism is the same root collectivist idea behind Nazism, behind communism, behind socialism, behind today's welfare state societies in Europe, and of course in the U.S. behind progressivism, and what people like FDR and Woodrow Wilson have taught. Because they want to eliminate the whole individualist idea here so that we can all serve the unity and the collective. And this will bring about heaven on earth. One of the things that
my son made this comment, Matthew Deagle, because he comes on the show periodically and he has his own show, and he says what they're really pushing here in the West is what's called cultural Marxism, whereas in Russia And in China, they pushed a thing called, basically a different form of Marxism, which will take over all the industry. And one of the comments made by Gorbachev when he came to the Presidio after Glasnost and Perestroika became a professor of political science is that our form of cultural Marxism was more effective at controlling every aspect, including the percentage of even all the business and the means of employment by government and by the transnational corporations than the communist system that took over all the business. Cultural Marxism, in fact, he said, was more powerful, more effective, and more, if you want to call it, hidden to the average person in the public. They didn't realize they were under a bigger boot, in other words.
Well, cultural Marxism, as it's called, came down from a Marxist philosopher in Italy named Gramsci. And he recognized that the way you impose Marxism is not by a violent revolution. It's just by taking over all the bastions of culture, the universities, the media, and so on. So that
and the church. And the church, which is, the church, like, for example, the current pope, which is, the current pope basically is a cultural Marxist.
Yes, he is. And so, therefore, you teach people that the collective is more important than you are.
Right.
That you are to serve it, and whatever ideals the ruling elite hands down to you, you are to accept without question. That's what political correctness is all about.
Right.
And just then the group force around you, what I in another book call the herd inside our heads, turns you into a kind of perpetual lynch mob, or a kind of team in which you don't think of yourself anymore. You're willing to sacrifice yourself for the team.
I saw that in the medical system, and I call it the chicken yard of medicine. If you're a young, smart chicken, you're going to get your feathers plucked off, and you're going to be bleeding in the chicken yard, because the older chickens won't like it. But the same thing in every realm, whether it's the churches in America, and it's every religion. It's not just Judaism or Islam, it's Christianity. They all have garbage. It just turns out that some of the garbage in Islam is the most dangerous, because you have nail bombers and people with nuclear weapons and other things.
And one thing that is at the heart of progressivism is they are scientific, like Marx called what he taught scientific socialism, but it's a very perverted form of science. It's not based on free inquiry. It's based on imposing ideas with the authority of a new priesthood who wear white robes and call themselves scientists and tell you that the world is warming, even though all the actual measurements contradict that.
Yeah, I like to choose a little twist on that word. I call it scientistic. They're not scientists, they're scientistic. In other words, they use the robes of science to show that their theology, whether it's geopolitical theology or Marxism, is actually not a science at all. It's a pseudoscience. It's a form of totalitarian mind control. And that's where we see Baltimore destroyed.
Scientism and so on.
Yeah. That's where we see the... So how to get the book again? Let's repeat that.
Yeah, the book is absolutely free and postpaid. Won't cost you a penny. Call 1-800-630-1494. Just leave your name and number. We'll get back to you. That way we can find what form you want it in. Do you want it as an ebook or whatever? 1-800-630-1494.
And the title of the book.
That way we can notify you when the next 6 books in our series come out.
Yeah, and the title of the book is...
Title of the book, We Have Seen the Future and It Looks Like Baltimore, The American Dream versus Progressive Dream.
You have a future in comedy, too, don't you?
Gee, I hope so. I'd hate to live in too serious a universe or heaven.
Yeah, if you take yourself too seriously, like the latest Superman-Batman movie, it tends to not be what it could be.
Yeah, and I think we all